Good evening, you fantastic and glorious degenerates of this floating rock that we call Earth. Welcome to Off the Wire. I am your host, Noel Olin, aka the Cajun Libertarian. And tonight we have an absolutely exceptional guest, somebody that I admire with a great deal. Um, it's incredible. I cannot wait to get to it. And so, stay tuned because this is going to be one exceptional show coming up right now on Off the Wire. Yes, indeed. Welcome back, friends and family of liberty and sanity and all things that we want to come across this wire. Um, this is going to be exceptional. Don't forget to hit the like, the share, the follow button, subscribe to this channel. This is going to be amazing. This show has had absolutely exponential growth. And it's so shocking to me that I've only been doing this for like a year and a half. And we have the numbers that we have. And it not only that, but it's trending so fast in the right direction. And I truly believe that it's because of the authenticity of what we present here and the amazing guests that I'm actually able to gather and present to you, like the one that we have tonight, which may be one of the most important guests, if not the most important guest that I've ever had. A voice, Chloe Cole, that I believe is one of the most important voices in America right now, not just for our youth, but for everyone else in between. And I do not say that lightly. You, the audience, you absolutely know this. I don't say those types of things much. I don't overhype things because I don't want you to be disappointed. There is no overhyping of tonight. This is without doubt one of the most important voices you are going to hear in this country right now. And that's Chloe Cole. I want to read you her Twitter bio real quick. Or at least some of it, right? She's 18. She's a female, suspiciously photogenic. I don't know about the suspiciously part. Very photogenic. Former trans kid, T plus blockers. I'm assuming that testosterone plus blockers is what she's talking about. At the age of 13, double mastectomy at 15, and detransed at 16. So we're talking about somebody who has been through the absolute gauntlet of this movement that we're calling, I guess, the trans movement. I don't know, because there's so many trans people that are really fighting against this, right? You got gays against groomers, you got trans against groomers, you got massive amounts of people saying, hey, absolutely not. This is not something that we're going to accept. We are for the kids. And Chloe has an absolutely exceptional story that we all need to hear, that the entirety of America, and possibly even, not possibly, the majority of the earth needs to hear. But the fact of the matter remains is that the rest of the globe is probably not dealing with the things that we're dealing with here. So we're going to get into it with her. I'm going to let you hear her story. And my God, is this going to be a fantastic episode for sure. So with that being said, let's tackle our two sponsors real quick, and then we're going to get right into it. So the first sponsor we have is GapArmory.com. Gap Armory carries a wide variety of parts and accessories, whether you're looking for to build kits or 3D printed firearms, optics, outstanding level 4 body armor, or anything in between, they have you covered. Gap Armory is libertarian owned and operated. They also accept Bitcoin. Gap Armory has the gear that you need to bridge the gap between your self defense preparedness and government intrusion. Get what you need today at gaparmory.com. That's GAPARMORY.com. For those of you that are listening later, that's GAPARMORY.com. Probably spelled that wrong. That's okay. I'm very, very, very excited for this show. So I'm trying to speed through this stuff. Disto, DSYDO.com. DSYDO.com. It's a libertarian owned t-shirt company who designs intended to start a conversation. Use code Cajun15 for 15% off your order at DSYDO.com. Wow, did I mess that up? My bad, RJ. You're good though, brother. Thank you for sponsoring the show. DSYDO.com. You can get shirts like these, and I left the Gap Armory image up there. Look, dangerous liberty over peaceful slavery. So, with that being said, now that I done screwed up both of my sponsors, I am so sorry. I am just very excited for this show. I apologize. I'm ready to get to it. So let's get to it. Y'all, please go visit those sites and tune in today. Now, let's get to Chloe Cole.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here, Noel.
Chloe, thank you so much for being here. You are an absolutely amazing individual. You're 18, right?
Yeah.
You're 18 years old. That's crazy. And yet you are an extremely successful activist, and you've garnered like literally almost 100,000 followers on Twitter. What's life been like since you started this?
It's pretty crazy because I really just started this year in the spring. I mean, I kind of talked about like my life experiences on my personal social media, but it was only this year that I really set up my Twitter and started speaking about it publicly. And it blew up pretty quickly. I wasn't really expecting it, but I mean, I went from earlier this year, like being basically just playing video games in my room half the time to, I mean, I'm basically traveling all the time now. Like I'm either in a car or a plane or I'm out somewhere. It's pretty crazy, but I love being able to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. And to be honest, I am super glad that you are doing what you're doing, because just complete transparency here. I am 100% against, and have been the entire time, against these types of issues with children, which I don't mean to, please take it. I don't mean to degrade you as a child, right? But I do have a 14-year-old daughter that's 4 years away from you, right? You're 18 years old. And so I really want your voice out there. I don't think that you are a child per se, but you're an extraordinarily amazing voice. And I don't even know how to say it, to be honest with you. It's just it's impacted me in a great deal that I cannot put into words. And you're someone who is you're facing a lot of controversy. You're facing a lot of, if I can say, death threats, violence threats against you. How real is that? And what has that been like for you, if you don't mind talking about it?
I mean, even on my personal social media, it wasn't really to the point that it was now, but when I started talking about my how I regretted my transition and how it was negatively affecting several areas of my life, I got a lot of hatred from other trans individuals in the, I guess you'd say, in the community. Um, they wouldn't like resort to like threats or anything, but they would tell me things like, "You knew exactly what you're doing to yourself. Like, you're not a victim." And they would,
Right.
they would say things like, "By talking about this, you're making other people really uncomfortable and just harming our community, and you need to stop. You need to basically just keep your mouth shut." Um, and I've kind of faced that attitude from a lot of other transgender people for quite a while, unfortunately. But
Right.
there are a lot of people who, especially older trans identified individuals, who agree with what I'm saying and are completely against like the transition of children. Um,
Right.
but as I've garnered more publicity, I've gotten a lot more, both a lot more support and a lot more. There's some people who haven't been too friendly to me, and I've been getting not only some really just awful messages, just a lot of threats to violence and even death as well. People telling me to kill myself, basically. And
Wow.
recently, I've gotten a threat from somebody in my area, and so I have to hire security now. It really does suck.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And you're only 18. That's crazy to me. So, what are your experiences like with this? Is there a way that we can combat some of this hatred? And can you, in your own words, really explain why this hatred, this vitriol, this vile, disgusting behavior is coming your way just because you're speaking out in your own experience? I don't understand this. A part of me thinks that I do understand it in the fact that, like, they just want their agenda pushed forward
That's a big
instead
part
of,
of it.
yeah, yeah. Let me know about it.
I mean, there's a lot of factors in this, but I think the treatment I get from um, other trans individuals who really strongly disagree with what I'm saying. It stems from multiple things. I think there is a little bit of jealousy in that I was able to transition younger, which they have been pushing for, especially in the past few years. Like they basically say like there's a rush to transition kids pretty much as soon as they get diagnosed with dysphoria, and they say the younger the better, but it's really not true. I mean, there's a lot of trans individuals who transition later in life as fully developed adults, and they are satisfied with their transitions. I don't really understand why there is such a rush to do it, but it's also that there is a lot of delusion, and it's basically like my story is really a challenge to this ideology and seeing these little slivers of truth.
Right, right. No, no. And that, I think that that's what the major pushback is becoming to materialize in, is that these people, they're, and these people I put in quotes because I don't know who these people are. You can call them left, you can call them right. I think that paradigm is actually ridiculous. I think it's a spectrum of IDs
I
or
agree.
ideology, you know, and it's weird to see. Weird's an understatement for me, but I'm trying to be, like we talked about before the program. I'm really want to be sensitive here, and I really want to project your experience accurately without any sort of political biases. And so I know I know you've told your story many times. But if you don't mind, will you take us all the way back at the beginning of your journey, starting with being the youngest of several siblings, which my wife is also. She's got one younger sibling behind her, but
Mhm.
she's got a lifetime of extreme abuse coming from her both blind parents, but mainly her father. Can you give us some sort of example of or experience of what you went through as what I believe that I heard and what I think that I know about you? And again, please correct me on any wrong think whatsoever. That you are the youngest of many children, and you were a tomboy that was fighting with being a tomboy
Mhm.
for quite a while. And then when that started to transition into when you started to believe about gender ideology and what made you change your mind.
Yeah, so I was born to a family of about 5 kids. All my siblings are older than me, and they're all half siblings. I have one sister and one brother on each side. There's about like a 7 to 8 year age gap between me and the rest of my siblings, and I did have like a lot of influence from both my brothers and sisters growing up. With my older brothers, I played a lot of video games, and I stole their Legos and toy guns and stuff. And then with
Right.
my older sisters, I would like play dress up and learn how to do makeup with them and things like that. And so I was kind of in the middle on being like a tomboy and a girly girl. But as I got older, they started getting to middle and high school, and they turned to teenagers, and they wanted to kind of do their own thing, and they didn't really want to associate with me as much. So I did kind of get lonely. And at school I was also experiencing a bit of loneliness as well, because I'm on the spectrum, and I do struggle with socializing um, a little bit. It's gotten better over the years, but as a kid it was really tough, and I found that it was especially hard to really communicate and make friends, and especially with other girls my age. And so there was a little bit of gap there. As I got older, I started to fit in more with the boys more than the girls, and eventually I started to wonder like what exactly it was that was separating me from the other girls, and it started to become a bit of an insecurity of mine. I also started using social media at 11 after I got my first phone, and
Hmm.
seeing all the images of women on there, um, looking like supermodels, either like editing their photos or wearing a lot of makeup or getting plastic surgery on themselves. I started to feel like there was an ideal that I wasn't really matching up to, um, in yet another
Hmm.
way. And I grew up in an age where women who are very curvaceous, they call it bottom heavy or thick, are
Yeah.
are the ideal. I was kind of a skinny girl, a little slender and a little bit on the muscular side because I was a bit of a tomboy, a little on the athletic side, and so I had smaller breasts and hips. I was only so old, but I also had a little bit of muscle, and a little like my shoulders were a little on the bigger side, and I liked having my hair shorter. And I started to feel like, I don't really look like these other women. I feel like I look more like a boy than anything. So what's the point of even trying to be pretty like a girl? Like, am I ever going to have any worth as a woman? And I started
Right.
to develop some body image issues. It wasn't until um, I started seeing LGBT specific content, though, that I started to think like maybe there is a way out of this. And I would often get recommended. Um, it was usually other biological women, between the ages of, I'd say, around 12 to maybe early 20s, who identified as male or transmasculine or non-binary. And I would kind of like, they would post about their lives and their
Yeah.
experiences, and they had a lot of the same struggles that I did, and they seemed so much happier when they transitioned. And I often saw a lot of these people just completely transform from people who had a rough relationship with their families and their peers, and all of a sudden they were loved and
Right.
accepted, and people had their backs. And that really that really it left an impact on me, and it was something that, you know, I kind of wish to have myself. And, you know, I was also at an age where I was starting to wonder who I really was and what role I would play in the world. And, you know, naturally I started wondering, like, am I one of these things? Like, you know, they got all these crazy labels and flags and stuff. So there is kind of an appeal to kids and younger people um, in that way. And I started to wonder, like, who am I attracted to? What is my identity? Maybe I'm bisexual or pansexual or genderless, agender, or maybe I'm bigender. And then eventually it went to, like, you know, it just makes sense that maybe I'm just not a girl in the first place. And I think that I am the boy.
Can I be perfectly candid with you?
Go ahead.
There was I had my 14-year-old daughter on this show just a couple of weeks ago. And prior to the show, I asked her, I said, you told me, and this is a great thing, right? I don't want people to mistake this for something wrong, because I really want to address this. For me personally, this was a great revelation for me in my relationship with my 14-year-old daughter. At the time, she was 11. She comes out to me and she tells me that she's bi.
Mm.
Okay. And then I talked to her just a couple of weeks ago, and I brought her on the show for the first time. And it was a very massive audience, and still growing, of that show. And at the end of it, she told me she was pansexual. It wasn't on the show though. It was in her room, right? That we talked about it, and I'm very appreciative, and very, very. I guess I can't say any better. Very appreciative of the fact that my teenage daughter can be open with me in dialogue, and tells me, like, I asked her. I said, "You told me when you were 11 years old you were bisexual, or you thought you were bisexual." Now, putting aside the fact that a freaking 11-year-old is talking about sex whatsoever is beyond absurd. And then she comes back to me 3 years later, after I readdress the situation, after talking about, and she knows I do this, right? She knows I'm very popular at this, or I guess I'll put popular in quotes. Um, what would you say to someone like her when you hear that coming from me?
I mean, I think part of the issue is that parents, there is kind of a generational gap in that they don't really understand technology as well
Absolutely.
as my generation and the generation before, because they didn't grow up with it. But I mean, a lot of parents, and I don't really blame them for this, kind of just, you know, while they're working or they're doing the chore or something, they'll just, like, hand their kids an iPad or a phone or something so that they can be
Right.
distracted and not bother them while they're in the middle of that. But
That's exactly right.
I mean, we've basically made kids dependent on technology for a lot of things, not only entertainment but also socialization. And, you know, kids are using social media younger and younger. And I feel like social media has played a role in how we see a lot of things, and it's had some consequences. I mean, a lot of people in my generation have become less focused on things that I think really matter, like community and what we contribute to society, and they become a lot more vain, a lot more self-centered. And I think that's kind of a big issue. That's kind of a big part of it. And
Completely agree.
there's just become so much introspection that it's actually become detrimental a little bit.
Yeah.
And nobody is really focused on, I mean, a lot of kids these days, they're more active on social media and technology than they have been in previous generations. And there's less of focus on things like school, extracurriculars, and clubs and sports.
Right.
So they're not
Right.
really active. They're not really out doing things anymore. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of what's caused this.
So, how much do you think that social media played, um, or had a play in your decision to carry forward with not only just hormone blockers, but then eventually, like, literally a double mastectomy, which is pretty irreversible, I would say. Again, I want to
Mhm.
be very sensitive here, so
It
please
is.
stop me. Okay. Okay,
No,
very
don't be
good.
afraid.
All right. I just I want this to come across great. And you're a great person. You're very, 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 very brave, because as I know it, and I want to ask you this later, but I want to acknowledge to the audience right now that you have, just because of your testimony, received literally violent and death threats going through with this. So, speaking your story, how much do you think that social media had a play in your decision in all of this?
I really think social media was the catalyst. I mean, the idea that I could escape being grown into a woman and could actually be a boy instead didn't occur to me until I started using it. Um, I also forgot to mention that I feel like a lot of modern feminism has also played a role,
Hmm.
or I should say, postmodern feminism has played a role in my
Right.
feelings around being a woman. Because growing up, a lot of women and girls who I was close with, I would hear like their accounts of some really scary parts of being a woman, like things like being the victims of rape or assault or sexual abuse. And that was a really big thing that I feared would eventually happen to myself, and I really wanted to escape from it. But there are other things on top of that, like the way that other women talk about things like female puberty or getting periods and the possibility of getting pregnant and then eventually going through childbirth and menopause. It's like it's just all terrifying. There's nothing good about it. It's all just painful and it sucks. And they never talked about, like, I never really heard about like the blessings that came with any of it. And so
Right.
naturally I had kind of a negative view of growing into a woman, and I didn't really want anything to do with it, especially from I would often hear from feminists. I would see like feminist content online saying like, "Oh, we live in a patriarchy. Women are oppressed and they're losing their rights, and we're losing." They would use phrases that would kind of scare me, like
Yeah.
reproductive rights, things like that. Like I'm old enough to like see through it now, but I mean, hearing that growing up was just terrifying. And I didn't, in a world where my my whole sex is supposedly oppressed and we're going through all this scary stuff, why would I want anything to do with that?
Yeah.
And it just so
Yeah.
happened to be that a lot of the pages, the accounts I would follow that would post feminist content also would post LGBT and especially trans related content as well.
That's a
So there's
big
been an
issue
overlap.
for me. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The overlap. That's a big issue for me, because I see that the LGBT plus community is kind of being hijacked by this this almost pedophilic, if not pedophilic, movement. I want to read this quote from Logic Rex, who is also, uh, to whom I believe, and you can correct me, Logic, if I'm wrong, a trans person that advocates and speaks out quite virulently against this movement that we're ba- basically, and again, I really want to be careful with my words here, but this is what I believe. So correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, this demonstrative destruction of children before they're ready to make these decisions. Logic Rex says it takes a strong individual to stand up on a mic and speak their personal story. Chloe shook the room that day. Think it was a school board meeting? Question mark.
Well, thank you. It might have been a city council meeting, but I thank you so much. That really means a lot to me.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. And this is what we need. We need you, Chloe. I mean, you are, and I'm not. This isn't for views. This isn't for likes. This isn't for shares. This isn't for more YouTube followers. This is me speaking from the God honest part of my heart, and that you are one of the strongest and most important voices in our country right now. I have 3 kids. Now, look, I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I have 3 children and I see the propaganda that's happening right now and that's destroying children's lives. And some of this stuff is irreparable. I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed. My wife said, "Don't go on a rant." All right, don't go on a rant. So let
Well,
me.
thank you for
Let me
standing up as a parent. There really
well,
aren't enough adults who are standing up to this.
and you know what, Chloe? I think a part of this is the fact that they're so scared to. The part of it is the fact that they're so scared of getting canceled or
Losing their jobs.
whatever, losing their jobs, whatever the consequences are. I don't freaking care because these people, and again, I have a 14-year-old teenage daughter. You're 18 years old. By the way, freaking congrats. You are an exceptionally intelligent and outspoken and bold and absolutely probably one of the most premier voices to come across this country and will be someone that absolutely changes the landscape of this conversation.
Thank you so
Congrats to
much.
you. No, you're welcome for sure. Thank you. Because at 18, no chance I would be in your position right now. I was an idiot, and so you're absolutely freaking incredible. And so we just talked about the social media exposure that really kind of got you into this arena and that influenced you in a way that you probably, correct me if I'm wrong here, you probably wouldn't have had this ideological train of thought had it not been for social media. Is that correct or wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, social media was introduced me to the idea that I could actually be the opposite sex somehow, or
And
that
that's
gender was a spectrum and that it was disconnected from sex in the first place. I genuinely believed. There's a theory that transgender people or people with dysphoria actually have the brain of the opposite sex, and that is what causes them to experience dysphoria. This has been disproven, but I was a gullible kid. I mean, I was just a kid, and I did fall into it, and I believe that because I had, these masculine behaviors, and I didn't fit in with other girls, and I felt like even I didn't even look like a girl. That made me somehow male, even if I was biologically female.
Let me ask you about that. I want to hear about that because I want everyone, including myself, because I'm not somebody who knows a lot about this. But you were talking about how this kind of content influenced you to convince yourself that you were a different biological sex, even though you probably kind of knew, or at least you've at least come to the conclusion that that was never possible. What was it in your mind? If you could pinpoint 1 or 2 things, which I'm sure is impossible, like right, I'm asking like an impossible question, or I think it's impossible for me. What was it in your mind that convinced you that you could be something that science says that you couldn't be?
Well, they say that the leading science and major medical institutions in the US actually say that transgender people are the sex that they claim to be, or whatever gender identity they claim to be. And I think the main theory they reference is the brain sex theory, the idea that the brain is sexed and that the sex of the brain can actually be separate from the sex of the rest of the body, which doesn't make sense, obviously, and this has been disproven in several studies. And those
Wow.
studies they cite usually are observing are actually observing the brains of people who are gay, and not really controlling for that. So,
if I can, and I didn't even think about this question prior, and so you don't have, under any circumstances whatsoever, do you have to answer the question? Do you think you're gay now, or do you think you're straight?
no, I mean, I've always been pretty much entirely attracted to men. That's one thing that did complicate this a little bit more.
Wow.
It did. Because I started on this path so young. I didn't really know about like what consequences it could have for like my romantic life. And when I went to high school, I realized like I had a very skewed dating pool because I was attracted to men, but I was identifying as a male. But I had such a skewed dating pool because I actually looked like a boy. By the time I was in my sophomore year, I passed pretty much completely as I looked like pretty much just any other boy my age, aside from the fact that I was a little bit shorter in stature. But it was mostly girls who were attracted to me. There were some girls who had crushes on me, but I didn't really have any interest in them. I didn't reciprocate. So, I mean, it was kind of lonely because I did get to watch like the rest of my peers get into relationships and go on dates and stuff, and I was just completely missing out on this. And this did cause a lot of distress for me. And there were a few boys who were attracted to me, and they did have crushes on me, and they did try to make advances on me. But a lot of them, they knew. Most people at school didn't know that I was trans, but these were people who knew me a little more personally, and it often felt like their attraction was more how do I say this, very sexual in nature, kind of like a fetish basically. And like I wasn't really, like I knew that they wouldn't treat me very well, and I didn't want any of that, and so I didn't really have any choices.
What was that like? If you don't mind, if you want to share again, please tell me anything that's off limits. I'm just because I want people to hear this, because I'm a person that's more psychologically based when it comes to many of these things. But when you were going through these emotions and you were going through these feelings, did you ever feel like you were 100% in the thing that you had bought into? Was there ever any doubt? And when the doubt came, how did you react to that internally?
The doubt didn't come until after I had surgery. Actually, I had a mastectomy when I was 15. Both my breasts had been removed as part of my gender affirming care to affirm my identity and become my real self as the boy I really wasn't actually. But I was completely sure about my transition up until that point. And after I woke up from the operation, it was like, great, I like accomplished this huge milestone, and I feel so happy. And I was pretty excited, and that excitement lasted for a little while until I went home. And my mom there was a major surgery, and I was basically disabled at that point. I lost a lot of the range of motion in my upper body, and I couldn't really move my arms or lift stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it wasn't until maybe about 3 or 4 months after that I could even lift up my arms above my head. And so I had to have my mom stay home and take care of me for a little bit. And until it wasn't until maybe about like a week or so after I came home that I could finally like bathe again. And once I started doing that, it was like I had to take care of my bandages and my dressings and like switch them out every time I bathed. And I would just like, I would look down at this area of my body that's been cut up and these big wounds on my chest. And there's there's so many details that I can't go into because it's just so graphic. I mean,
Right.
I would, because I think people need to hear this just to understand just how serious it is, but I also want to spare the details. But it's just not something that any 15-year-old should have to go through. It was traumatizing, to say the least, and I started to become more and more unhappy after over the course of the post-op period. And I thought it was just because it was, I was recovering from a surgery, and there's a bunch of emotions go along with that, but I never really got any better. I started to realize actually that I missed having a more feminine appearance, and in secret I would buy like makeup and women's clothing and just wear it when like nobody was home, or just like in the comfort of my own room. And it was something I was really embarrassed about because I didn't even look like a woman at that point. Everybody knew me as like their son or their brother, their nephew. And I didn't look like a girl anymore because I was on hormones for about 2 to 3 years by that point. It wasn't until I'd say a few months later when I was taking a psychology class that it started to really click for me, because I had a lesson on parenting, maternity, and there was one part of the lesson that explained how physical affection, and particularly breastfeeding, plays a role in the bond between the mother and her infant, and how that role will go on to affect that kid's cognitive and emotional development. And I realized that, I was told before my surgery that I would lose my ability to breastfeed my kids, but it was like, I thought it was a guy, and men don't do that. And also I didn't know like just what that really meant, because I thought like, well, if I have a kid, I could just get like donor milk or formula. But I realized that that's a special experience that I would never have the opportunity to have ever again, because of a decision that I made when I was 15.
And you went through these decisions with doctors' consent.
Mm-hmm.
And not only doctor's consent, you went through with this decision. Sorry, I'm trying to hold it together. Sorry. They weren't just consenting; they were pushing this, right? So, give me a second to get to part of that in my notes here. You had said that the doctor that discouraged you from this process because of concerns about your mental and cognitive health has probably been fired. And
Yeah.
that was the wrong note that I wanted, but it's fitting. So, can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I guess we'll go a few years back. I mean, that was I was just talking about the later stages of my transition, but earlier in my transition, once I came out to my parents, they referred me to like a therapist to get things sorted out, because as much as they wanted to support me, they didn't really know exactly what to do about the situation. And so they wanted to seek the help of the experts who could help us with this. And that is not how it went, because, as soon as I started talking to the therapist about like my feelings about believing that I was a boy and wanting to go forward with like a transition, it was basically like, oh, okay, you're a boy. I'll refer to you by your preferred name. And then I was referred to a gender specialist, and I got a diagnosis for gender dysphoria. And I wanted to go forward with medically transitioning, because I thought that was really the only way forward. Because not only the research I did on transition and gender dysphoria basically pushed transition as the means of treating dysphoria, that people with the gender dysphoria actually are the sex or the gender identity that they say they are, and that there is never really any regards to any alternatives really. And it was the same way with the doctors who treated me. Um, when I told my parents, like, I want to go on cross-sex hormones, I want to go on testosterone, they were a little concerned about this because I was so young. I was quite young to be making such a decision, and
Right.
they were like, "We don't understand why you are pushing for this, why you want this so much. Like, it's this we feel like you're not really old enough to be making that kind of decision, and we don't think that we don't think it's going to make you happy." But
Right.
they had an appointment with my, I don't remember who exactly it was. It was one of the physicians or psychologists who was involved with my transition. But they basically said the same thing. It was like, oh yeah, children already know their gender by a certain age. She definitely knows what she is, and if she's not allowed to transition, this will cause her significant distress to the point that she could be at risk of suicide if we don't go through with this. And they basically coerced them into allowing this to happen without any regards to any alternative therapies or even like any investigation of the factors that might have contributed to the onset of my dysphoria. It was just like, okay, so she's exactly what she says she is. And so, it was only a matter of months between getting the diagnosis and actually being referred to an endocrinologist to get me on hormones. And the first endocrinologist actually said, "No, I'm not going to let you go on these hormones. I'm not going to let you go on blockers. There could be some concerns for your brain development because you are so young." And
Right.
I believe he told me that I was actually one of the youngest patients that he had seen. And so that was really the only pushback that I had from any medical professional in this. Very quickly after that, maybe only a month, I think only about a month after, I was referred to another endocrinologist who then didn't really hesitate to get me on blockers. And after I started on blockers, I had another appointment with her because the plan was to start on both. And I got cleared for starting on hormones. And this is all at the age of 13. I was 13 years old when I started on the medicalization.
Wow.
And I don't think it was even like half a year by the time that I started on the medication.
Really?
And
So
yeah,
less than 6 months. As soon as you expressed concern,
around 6 months, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. Oh, and basically, if you had not been on social media, I'm just asking. I'm a fan of social media. Okay, I literally make money off of social media. Okay, so I'm not bashing social media, but if it wasn't for SM, would this have happened?
No, I don't necessarily think that social media is just an entirely bad thing. I think that, like many other things, there's pros and cons to it, but I definitely should not have been using it at the age that I was.
Right.
I did have basically completely unrestricted access to the internet.
Wow. Yeah. That by the way, for everyone listening, for every freaking parent listening, it's why we're supposed to do what we do, and that's monitor the intake of information that your child, especially at a teenage level, going through puberty, and it really is doesn't. It really is across the board. It doesn't matter what age your child is. The intake of social media is and should be at a high level monitored. So,
Yes.
Chloe, I want to ask you this, and thank you for agreeing with me. I'm pulling, as we talked about prior to the show, right? I'm pulling some of this content from your recent interview with Glenn Beck, who you were on his, not just his podcast, but on his radio show as well, which has millions of listeners, viewers, followers, all of the above. And what I think that you said, and correct me if I'm wrong in my interpretation here, you weren't suicidal until post transition. Is
Yeah,
that right or wrong?
I would say less post transition and more towards like the middle of my transition. I think in my sophomore year, that was when I was diagnosed with depression and social anxiety, and I did experience social suicidal ideation.
Wow. Wow.
And there were a
And
lot
I
of
did a
factors that played into that, but a big part of it was um, I did become more lonely as time went on, not only because I was struggling with dating, but I felt more and more, I guess you could say, estranged from my peers, and I was basically living a lie, and I was perpetuating this lie to other people as well as lying to myself. And I would constantly fear that like somebody would figure me out, like somebody would out me behind my back. And I use like male restroom and locker facilities. I was afraid that if somebody knew the truth, that they could seriously hurt me. And there was transitioning, especially so young, did add a lot of factors of stress into my life. And I mean, high school is already a pretty stressful experience. Um, it was quite tough.
can can I ask you a very personal question?
Go ahead.
Um, when did you hit rock bottom, and what was that process like?
There were a lot of points when I was quite low. After my surgery and once COVID hit, I found that I started to spiral downward further and further. You know, Not only did I go through this huge change in my body and literally lose organs
Right.
and have to look at these huge scars on my chest daily. Um, it was I didn't really have any interaction with the outside world anymore because um, I live in California. We had some pretty stringent restrictions on like leaving the house, going from place to place, and we had a lot of lockdowns. And at school, um, we weren't attending school in person anymore. I was just having online classes. That we were following the distance learning model, and a lot of my friendships really suffered. And I was a teenager. I was in high school, and that's a time when you're supposed to be out and about and interacting with your peers, and I just wasn't really getting that at all. And so I was just constantly inside, had cabin fever, and was always on the internet. And I started to further withdraw from the outside world, and my grades really started to suffer. Half the time, I wasn't really even participating in my online classes because I was just so depressed. I didn't really see a reason to anymore. And with the stress of starting to feel the regret of my transition creeping in, especially when I was so advanced in my transition, there were a lot of compounding factors. And um,
Hmm.
I think after I stopped transitioning and I really started to realize my regret and what really had just happened to me within the past few years. I think that was probably the lowest point in my life. I basically had no friends in person, and I just lost pretty much whatever friends I had. The rest were just on the internet, and I felt like I was damaged. I was on hormones for so long that I developed more masculine features, and I never thought that I could go back. And I was just so afraid. I had a lot of fear, even like returning to using female restroom and locker facilities. It was just it was scary. I thought that somebody would think like I was like a trans woman or something, that I was being creepy or something, when really I was a biological woman. And there's
Right.
on top of that, I was losing support from a community that I thought had really cared about me. But I broke their narrative and they couldn't handle that, and so they started to attack me, and even my friends who I went to school with didn't really.
Why do you think that they hate you so much for that? What, like, honestly, I'm desperately trying to find out the reason why this particular community wants to destroy voices and people like you. Why?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I feel like there's a big jealousy aspect to this because I did transition quite young, and I also came out of it relatively unscathed, and I did recover fairly well in terms of my appearance. My health is, I'm still kind of struggling with my health a little bit, but I also, there's a little bit of fear in this because not only am I basically destroying the narrative they have that it's better to transition younger and that the regret rates are lower than 1 or 2%, but also, seeing how advanced I was in my transition and that I still regretted it, that didn't work out for me, and that I went back on my decision. There's a little bit of it is a little bit scary, especially for somebody who wants to go through a transition. I mean, a lot of the people that I've received a lot of vitriol and threats from so happen to be people who are just a few years older than me. Maybe they're not on the medical process yet, or they're just a few months on hormones, and seeing somebody who is much further into the process still be wrong, I think that's kind of scary. I mean, and it is hard to admit that you are wrong about something. I mean, I had a lot of shame admitting to my family and my friends that after years of being their son, nephew, and so on, I was wrong. I was still their daughter.
That's just heartbreaking to me personally. I don't know for everyone else. I don't know about for you, Chloe. Right? Like, that to me is just, I don't know how to even comprehend that information, because to me it's you're a person. You're somebody who is literally trying to tell your story to the world so that you can help other people that were literally trying to discover themselves and deal with certain issues that you dealt with, and you came out on X particular side. I'm not even saying it was the right or wrong side. I have my own biases, and I'm sure we all know where those biases lie. But I'm saying, like, the fact of the matter that you're literally receiving death threats and violent hate online because of the story that you're telling from your own effing personal experience, to me is absolutely psychotic and evil. And I'm trying to hold it together here, because my God, is your story so freaking important to America right now?
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Yeah, it was how things have turned out. Certainly did not meet my expectations. That I didn't really even consider that I could regret my transition or how things would even go after the fact. I was so young, and nobody really told me that, like, even if transition does work out for you, the way it goes is how you feel about it will change over the course of a year, over the course of 3 years, 5 years,
Right.
10 years, several decades. And it's really not all rainbows and lollipops. Every stage of it is painful in some way or another. Either either physically or mentally. And there with every, in my experience, there was a bit of like a honeymoon period with starting on things like getting my first masculine haircut, or buying boys' clothes, or starting on testosterone, or getting my surgery. And eventually those great feelings of happiness just went away, and it became just the norm.
Would you consider those experienced moments of quote unquote happiness? I'll put that in quotes for me personally. Um, Euphoric and maybe even a slight bit of delusional.
Yeah, definitely. Both of those things.
Wow, wow, and that's so. It's so hard for somebody who's personally been through this. And I can only imagine. I've been through my own things, right? I've been through literally over a decade of drug and alcohol addiction where I was in rehabilitation for 2+ years. And so I'm not trying to equate the two. I'm just saying I've had my own battles, which I've had to internalize and dissect emotionally and intelligently and intellectually. And you're going through something that I could never imagine going through. It's incredible to me. I know this is a bit off topic, but I really kind of don't care, because I just have to give you credit because you're 18. You're 4 years older than my oldest daughter, and you're going through this. You've had to live this life, and you've had to grow up before you had to. And to me, that's just a fact. For a lot of other people, maybe not so much. I don't know. But for me, that's a fact. You've had to go through so much life prior than you were actually, obligated to go through. And it's maddening. It's I don't know how we deal with this. I have some ideas. I have some thoughts. I have a lot of opinions, obviously, Chloe, as you can probably derive from this one particular podcast that we've barely spent an hour on. But I can't comprehend what you're going through whatsoever, other than the fact that I can relate it to my own personal story, which is that we as human beings have some amazing hurdles to get over, and many of those hurdles should not be having to take at such a young age, Chloe. And my heart breaks for you, and at the same time, my heart is fulfilled because you were able to get through that. And I'm in such a torn position because I don't ever want to say the wrong thing, because you're such a victim of, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, in my opinion, you're a victim of abuse, of physical and mental abuse. That's my stance. You don't have to agree with that. Nobody else in the comment section, and the thousands of people that are going to watch the show, you don't have to agree with that. That's fine. That's my opinion. But I want you to be able to feel free and feel open to tell your story in a manner that you feel safe and that you feel is absolutely obligatory to today's society. And so I want to ask you two more questions, and then we'll get off of here because we're already over an hour, and you're a very, 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 very busy young lady that has some extraordinary potential and an absolutely fantastic life ahead of you in accomplishing these goals. And I don't say that lightly. I mean it 100%. So, last question of two. How much hate and violent threats are you getting?
Um, Quite a lot, actually. I mean, under pretty much every tweet I make, there is I'd say at least one or two people saying negative things. I'd say maybe about like once a week I get like a threat or like a really disturbing message.
Jeez.
But and I feel like sorry, I'm kind of getting off track here, but
No, you're good. You're good. Don't apologize.
you know, I have a lot of friends who don't necessarily agree with me, and we're not exactly on the best terms, and
Right.
I do worry sometimes.
How much is that worry? And what can we do to help?
Well, I guess the only thing I can really do is just see what happens. I mean, I am planning to move out of my area and out of state pretty soon, anyways.
I'm not going to ask you your area. I don't want to know. I don't want anybody else to know whatsoever.
I mean, it
Um,
is. I mean, I've talked about this before. Like, I'm in the middle of California.
That's not a great place to be.
Yeah,
Right
I'm
now.
kind of in the middle of all this stuff. So
There are parents, and you've actually expressed this. And I think you expressed it on the Glenn Beck program, the podcast and the radio show, both of which have like millions of people listening and watching, right? Which is a much lesser. Mine is a much lesser program, but I think you did say that people are doxing you, and they are trying to find out your area, and you're going to vacate that area, or did I get that wrong?
um, yeah, I plan to move out pretty soon, but
I wouldn't.
I'd say it's
I
mainly
would.
because it's just not the best area really, and I've been meaning to get out pretty much as soon as I hit adulthood. So, but nobody's like I haven't been like doxxed. I haven't been actually doxxed, luckily,
Oh, really?
but there's people out there like demanding like personal information from me, um, like my city where I live, and it's just really crazy to deal with.
No, I can't even imagine what you're going through. I'm fairly certain I misworded that question off the hook because I am just I I, I can't express to you or the audience the emotions that I feel hearing your story and talking to you personally. Um, they call it gender affirming care, right? And for those of you that are listening later, which will literally be thousands, and which is crazy to me, but this is where we're at now. I put that in air quotes, right? Um, this gender affirming care.
Yeah,
I
it's really delusion affirming care.
It's delusional affirming care.
Delusion affirming care. Because that's the only thing that it's really affirming. It's a delusion. Your your sex is something that you're stuck with at birth. It's an immutable trait, and nothing can change it.
And that's something that I remember you saying specifically, that sex, biological sex, is an immutable characteristic. And she's absolutely correct. 1000%. Your skin color, your genetics, all of the above, right? Your genetical design, biological sexuality, if that's the right term, is immutable. Am I wrong, Chloe? The fact is that your design at birth, and it is of my opinion, and everybody knows this from me, that I'm a Christian. I'm a Bible believing, disciple of Jesus. I am a libertarian, so I hate the government. But I also do believe that you, Chloe, were designed and you were known from the womb, and that Jesus and God could count the hairs on your head before you were ever birthed into this world, and that you were given a specific reason to have a voice for positivity on this planet. And I know this was not the direction, and trust me, it was not the direction I was wanting to go, Chloe. But it's here we are now. It's me expressing my opinion. Feel free to disagree. It's all fine. But this is just us talking at this point. You were designed as who you were born to be before you were ever birthed from your mother's womb, to be somebody of important value. And of all the troubles that you've been through at you're 18, and the 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 magnitude and volume of which you reach people, and how your voice is magnified, and how extraordinarily intelligent and professional that you are in reaching out to the community, and that, in my opinion, deserves it the most right here and right now. I can't thank you enough. I just can't. I can't. And you are man. If I was you at 18, oh my God, like you are a impactful person, and I'll leave it at that. Chloe, please give us your final thoughts. You are an amazing, amazing person. You are a woman of great stature. And my God, I can't thank you enough. Y'all all can see at Cole. I really did actually want to ask you why you chose Chew Cole for Twitter instead of Chloe Cole. And then donorbox.org. There's more ways to donate to her causes, which are extraordinarily important. But we're going to let her tell us how we can help her cause the most right now.
Thank you so much. So the reason why I chose the username Chew Cole is because Chew is just a nickname I've had for, I think somebody at school made it up when I was in elementary school. It's just a cute little thing. But I really feel like there is a spiritual component in this. I do really think that this is a spiritual battle.
Amen.
I am a believer in God. I really don't think I could have got through any of this without his guidance. And I don't think there's very few instances in history where the line between good and evil has been so clear. And I think a thing about a lot of these activists, these people who either identify as trans, or they believe in the ideology, they believe that anybody who identifies as one thing or another is actually exactly that, or that children can identify as trans and consent to it. A lot of those people I find I believe they're people who struggle. They're struggling to grasp onto some sort of belief. They're a bit nihilistic. They're depressed, and they desperately want something to believe in. And this ideology, it captures some of the most vulnerable.
Wow. Chloe, can I have you back on many more times? Like many more times. But can I at least have you on for one more show, and we talk about some of the psychology that you're putting out right at the very end? Is that possible?
I'd love to.
Oh my God, thank you so much. You are like me. If I was to say, if I was a kid, like if I could grow up to be somebody, right? This is who I would want to be. And I'm 39. I'm old enough to be your damn dad. You are an exceptional human being. You are somebody that, and I say this with a heavy heart, you are somebody who is beyond their time. And I truly believe that you are beyond your time because of the circumstances that you were forced into. However, had you not been forced into those circumstances, you would still be a very intelligent, sharp, and incredible human being and an absolutely amazing woman. Chloe, you are, I think, my favorite guest that I've had on this show. And that's pretty big because I've had some of the biggest people on this show that I could have actually asked to be with. And there's a reason why I shoved you into I didn't shove you, I picked you to be in that Twitter thread that you agreed to say that these, this is a growing show. It's an exceptionally growing show. And I'm going to have these people on eventually. At no point did I expect you to respond within minutes and say, I'm down. You are awesome. And you have 100% of my utmost respect. And my God, can I not wait to have you back on the show again? I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this show.
I hope you mean that. That's incredible. You're a very genuine person, so I take you at your word. I think you really do or did enjoy this show. Thank you so much. I was like semi nervous. I'm never nervous for this stuff, right? This is, one of the reasons why it does so well, I guess. But I was nervous about this because I wanted to get your story out there. I wanted you to be comfortable, and I'm not somebody who has been doing this for very long, so I can't thank you enough. You are remarkable. You are really a remarkable person. I cannot wait to have you on again. I'm not going to bug you about it because I know you're very busy. You're an extremely successful activist, and you should be. And so I won't bug you. Thank you so much. I've got at Chew Cole and donorbox.org on the show. I was supposed to shout it out many times, but I got so wrapped up in Chloe's in conversation. I'm sorry, y'all. Please, for the love of God, go to her Twitter, follow her, follow the donorbox.org, or contribute to it rather than follow, and do everything we can to get her voice out there. Is there anything left that you want to say, Chloe?
Uh, I think I covered everything that I wanted to speak about
You did.
today, anyways.
Yeah, today.
I'm looking forward to
I
coming back on, though.
Awesome. I am so looking forward to you coming back on. It's remarkable. It has been incredible. You are an amazing person. Thank you so much, Chloe. I will talk to you again very soon as you approve that I can talk to you.
And I
Have a
hope
good
it's
evening.
soon.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Very soon. Absolutely freaking fantastic. Chloe Cole, amazing woman. Incredible. This was, I only hesitate to say this next thing because of the people that I've had on. I don't want to offend them, but I'm fairly certain that the people that I've had on will completely understand. This has been my favorite guest that I've ever had. And that says something because I've had extraordinary guests. I've had Spike Cohen like 5 times, vice presidential nominee of the third largest party in the country. I've had Carol Roth multiple times, who is an economist and former New York Times and Wall Street banker. I've had Matt Kibbe, Blaze TV, same as Carol Roth. I've had some of the most outstanding guests that many of the people in my position that have been doing this for years would only hope to have these kinds of guests. I don't say that out of arrogance. I say it out of humility. I swear to you, I promise you, that's why I mean it. Chloe Cole, the best guest I've ever had. And the reason being is because she's an exceptional human being. As to the list that I just said, exceptional human being, exceptionally brave human being. Unreal. Unreal. Probably my favorite interview of all time. My favorite interview of all time. And it's because I've had people like Spike Cohen on multiple times, and we get along so great, and we have such great conversations, and we laugh so much, and the numbers skyrocket. All the above doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Spike, I love you, bro. We're family. Like, you literally called me a Cohen. Doesn't matter. Chloe Cole. Best interview I've ever had. I am just shook. I had to do my best to fight back the tears. I wish to God with every inch of my soul that I could have been her at 18. I swear. Full stop. Hands down. Not even questioning it. You guys are amazing. I love you very much. I am so shocked that this show continues to grow as one of the largest podcasts in the world. And I am completely stunned and humbled to have somebody like Chloe Cole on the show to tell her story and to do it so candidly, and that we could have the conversation so candidly. I thank you. I love you very much. As always, I tell you every single time, you are what makes this show possible. And I am stunned that we are where we are. That's the reality of it. That's the honesty of it. That's the truth of it. That you make the show. As I've told you multiple times, there's a lot of new people here now, which is incredible, right? Like literally hundreds and thousands of new people joining this show just within the last couple of weeks. I'll tell you right now, because you've never heard it, you make the show possible. And this is an elected position because you could vote with your time, and you could go vote somewhere else with said time. That's a fact. But you don't. Instead, you stick around here for amazing guests like Chloe Cole, which I am completely humbled and shocked that I was even able to get her on the show just based off a Twitter thread. Take your shots, fam. Look, take your shots. I did it. I took my shot. I put her in there because I wanted her on this show, and I didn't think it was possible for at least 2 years. She responded, take your shots. Take your shots. Incredible show. One of the best I've ever seen in my life. I'll end it there. I love you very not. I love you very much. You're absolutely exceptional. You'll see me same Cajun time, same Cajun channel, and I'm out.